forget about the tools that you have in the ribbon right underneath here. Let's start on the right, the dimension jog line. Start the command, select the dimension, and then pick where you want that jog line to go. Now it went to the end. I snapped to it by accident. Let's make sure my O-snaps are turned off. I can pick this and I can slide it and move it to a different spot. Now I have some other tricks that I can do here with the jog line. I can select the jog line command, and you see here I have the option to remove it if I want. So I click remove, and now it's gone. Now this one here is the update. So if I've created some dimension styles and I've changed them, and for whatever reason I've done some overrides or something, I can select the dimension objects, press enter, and then we'll update them to go back to the dimension style settings. So that's one way to fix it. I can use the inspect command. It adds or removes different information. I can put these different tags and things in my dimensions. I can put in a label, etc. Click OK, and just follow the instructions on screen. And there you go. Now here I have a continue or a baseline dimension. If I hit continue, it will continue from the last dimension that I put in, and just lets me keep going and going and going, and there you go. Or if I pick the continue and I don't want to continue from that last one, but I want to say continue from this dimension here, I can type in the letter S or hit select. Pick the side that you want to start from and go from there. This is a real nice tool to quickly dimension something in a line and in a row, and it makes it nice and neat. Now you also have the baseline. And that works in a similar way, only instead of continuing in a row, it puts it above or below. And again, you can select the dimension that you want to work with. And that keeps going. This is a quick dimension. It quickly creates a series of dimensions from selected objects. But that only works in model space. So if I double click in here, where I can actually select the objects and press enter, and because I'm in a different scale, it looks really strange. But that's what happens. It will dimension across the x-axis or the y-axis and quickly put the dimensions in there. Now I can adjust the space here between different dimension objects. I can tell it to automatically do it, or I can do it myself. Or here I can put in breaks. I add a dimension break to this line. I can pick it auto, manual, or remove. Pick auto, and it put a break right here. So those are some of the advanced tools that you can use to really tweak the visual display of your dimensions. I know there was a lot there, and a lot of them you're not going to use all the time, but they're there, and they will help you to make your drawing better.
If you want to set
dimensions in AutoCAD are very complicated because they have so many options to them. Keep it simple and make sure your dimension styles fit your needs. I wanted to look at a few key system variables and methods of dimensioning. The setting I'm talking about is the dim associate, or DIM-ASSOC. Let's open up a file that has some dimensions in it. Let's look at the dimension example file again. The command I'm talking about, the DIM-ASSOC, or dim associate, press enter. There are 3 settings for it. We've mentioned this in an earlier section, but I want to go over it again because it's very important. Because you're going to find drawings that other people have used where they've changed this setting. It's my opinion that you should always have it set to 2. It's that simple to me, because that gives you the most control and the easiest way to control everything. Right now in this file here, in this drawing, the dim associate system variable is set to 2. What that means is that when I dimension anything in here, in paper space, it will read the true dimension of the line work as drawn. I don't have to do anything special. I don't have to put a scale in the dimension style, which you can. You can change that If you go to primary units, you can change the scale factor. Now, I can scale everything by 5 and click OK, hit close, and as you see, it makes everything 5 times larger. Now, as you see, I can go in the opposite direction, and instead of having everything 5 times larger, I can make it 5 times smaller. That's a matter of scale. And you can do that if you're dimensioning in paper space. However, the problem is that style now only works at that scale. So if I'm drawing something at 1/4 inch to a foot, I have to set it up to a 48 scale. So I can't use that dimension style anywhere else. Let's keep it simple. Let's just keep the dimension style set at 1:1. And let's let AutoCAD do the scaling for me. If you have your dimension associate setting set to 0 and you create dimensions, they'll look like your style and they'll just draw everything else the way it needs to be. Except you see here, it's not scaling it properly. It's just drawing it to the scale in paper space. So you'll have to enter in the text the way you need it to. And it's not a dimension style. It's just a line. Several lines. The arrowhead is just a solid shape, and your text is just text. Now, the nice thing about this is that I can do whatever I want to this dimension, and it's very easy to edit it. But as you saw before, there were tons of ways and methods and tools available to us to change the display settings of our dimension. So this is an old setting in a way when we didn't have as many controls visually of styles for our dimensions. So people would do this to be able to make them look the way they need to, but you lose control. You lose quick control. You lose convenience. Now, if your setting is turned to 1, it turns your dimensions into a block-like object that can be controlled by styles. But if this is the setting you use, then you need to modify your style scale like we showed you earlier. So you would have to dimension it accordingly by a scale because it won't be able to do that. I'll show you. Set it to 1. And now when we try to dimension this object, see, it's 5. It doesn't know what the scale of the viewport is. You have to tell it, or you have to change your style to match. The setting of 2, it sets your dimensions to the insertion points based on the model space objects that you select. It does several things for you. Most importantly, it measures the true distance that's involved. And it means that you can make one dimension style for the entire file regardless of the scales used. Before we had the setting of 2, we just had 0 and 1. We had to make tons of styles, one for each scale that we could possibly use in our drawing. This got redundant and difficult to manage. So the only reason to make a second style now in your file is to display it differently, as you can see here in our Styles tab. If you need some text bold, if you need something hidden, if you need a tick mark instead of an arrow, or whatever that case is, it's a strictly visual style difference, nothing else. And it makes things much more simpler. And a lot of times you're only going to have a one dimension style in your file to begin with and to end with. If you delete an object in your drawing, for example, if I delete this line, I lose my associativity for my dimension. Though it's not going to really change any, but still it's no longer associated to that object. So if I replace it with another object, I'm just drawing something else, I can reassociate that dimension to a new object. You just use the reassociate command to reassociate dimensions to your object. If you click down here, and it's right here on the left, the reassociate command. Pick the command, now you select your object, you specify where you want your first dimension line to go to, and then you specify your second, and there you go. And now this dimension has been reassociated to an object. Your objects the way you need them to. Leaders give you a tool to annotate callouts or labels to your objects. Let's open up the dimension example file. We see here in the styles and in the dimension tab several different dimension types: our angle, our align dimensions, horizontal, vertical, and our radius. But sometimes you need to call things out with a certain annotation, with a leader, point to it, and have a text, some sort of note. It could be one word, two words, an entire sentence, or a series of notes. You use the leader command. Now, multi-leaders have essentially replaced leaders, but I wanted to show them to you in case you run into them. We'll talk about multi-leaders more in the next section, but a leader is controlled style-wise by the dimension style. So if we open it up, your settings here will control all of your leaders, just the way they do with regular dimensions. Now, you can't access the leader command from the ribbon anymore because Autodesk wants you to use the multi-leaders. That's okay. To get to it, you just type in leader. A leader is very simple. You pick a point, and that starts the leader. As you see, it has an arrowhead and then a line. You click another point, and that's where the tail starts. Click another point again, and you can keep going. Press enter. Now type in some text. Press enter again, and there you go. That's a leader. Now you can grab it, you can grip edit it, you can do a lot of different things to it. Now your line here will follow your text. So if I move the text in any way, this line will follow. Leaders are pretty simple. You can double click on the text to edit it, just like regular text. You can do some things with it, some things. Multi-leaders are much better, but you're going to run into old drawings or old files that are still using leaders. So I wanted to show them to you. So don't worry if they don't work like a multi-leader does. And I don't even recommend using a leader anymore. Always use a multi-leader, but you need to be aware of them because you're going to run into them. More controls over their display settings and features than the regular leader that we used to use all the time. Let's open up the annotation drawing file. To draw a multi-leader, go to the Annotate tab, then go to the Leaders panel. Click here to start the multi-leader command. Or on the command line, you can type mleader, M-L-E-A-D-E-R, or you can just type in MLD for the command shortcut alias. To draw your multi-leader, just do it like you would a regular leader or some dimension. Pick a point for your arrowhead to start from, and that can be from anywhere in your file. And you can see here, your arrowhead shows up, and if you're too close, then the arrowhead will go away automatically. But as soon as there's enough room, the arrowhead will pop up. So you pick your first point, you pick your second point, and that's where the tail starts. And now you have a text box right here. Just type in whatever you want to be in there. When you're done, just click somewhere outside. And there's your leader. Multi-leaders are great because they're very easy to use, very easy to edit, and you can do a lot of things with them. If you select the multi-leader, you have several grips. This grip here will just change where your arrowhead is. And as it repositions, it'll automatically flip to the other side of your text if necessary. Regular leaders can't do that. So this makes editing much easier. Now to edit the text, just double click it and you have access to it. And it works just like regular text. You can see up here you have access to all of your different text styles, and you get a little preview of what it's going to look like if you make the change. You can change your justification, and again, you get a preview of what it's going to look like. Now there's a lot more to multi-leaders than just this simple leader with text, and it's easy to edit. We have a few more grips. If I grab this one, I can reposition wherever it goes. And watch, if I bring it over here, the leader flips to the other side. That's very handy. Just like with other grips and grip editing, if I hover over that grip, don't pick it yet, I get some options. I get the stretch command, which is what it defaults to, or I can lengthen it. So I can lengthen the landing, or I can add another leader. Thus the term multi-leader. Now this is going to be a real ugly leader, but I wanted to demonstrate to you how easy it is to do. And this side has the exact same features as well. I can also change the length right here. That'll scoot it in. And you can see as I grip edited the length of the landing here, made it shorter, this landing stayed the same size. It's just that it came in relative to the text. I can move the text by clicking in the top left here. If I had a paragraph, I could add more space to it, or I can close it all the way up. You can do the same thing inside the text editor itself. So you can do a lot of things with grips. Make sure your O snaps are off, otherwise it's going to snap right to a spot. But this can control spaces between your landings and between your text. And if I move the position of my text again, everything else goes along with it. All the leaders will even come now to the same landing. It's all automatic. Now that's really cool. Now if you want to take away one of these leaders, just select the multi-leader object, right click, and you get a lot of other commands. Some of the same ones, erase, move, copy, select, etc. But you can also add a leader or remove a leader. Pick remove a leader, then specify which leaders you want to remove. Press enter, and they're gone. If you right click again, you can change the multi-leader style, and again you can save it as a new multi-leader style. And again, you have the rest of your right-click shortcut menu special tools. The real power in M-leaders or multi-leaders lies within their styles. So let's open up the multi-leader style manager. You get to that right here. It works just like the dimension styles we've seen before. Right now in this file there are three: an annotative, an architectural, and a standard. We were using the architectural style, so we'll take a look at that. If you want to make a new one, just click New. If you want to modify the one that you're working on, click Modify. There are three tabs. One's for the leader format, and this gives you a type. You can have a straight line, as we're using here. You can use a spline, and that will curve the line work, making it nice and fancy, giving it a bit of a hand-drawn look. Or you can turn the leader off altogether. It's up to you and what you need. You have your color, line type, line weight, your arrowhead, same settings, the size, and then the leader break. The leader break is just where it goes between the end of the leader and the text. You have your leader structure. You can set a maximum number of leader points. So I can keep clicking if I need this line to just wiggle or jiggle or meander around my drawing. But typically 2 points is enough. I can set the first segment at a specific angle and make the second segment at a specific angle. Let's take a look. So if I make a new one, just click anywhere. You can see how it's snapping to specific angles. Well, that's nice because it makes your drawing look more uniform. So that's a nice feature to have. Since we only really have one segment, the second segment angle isn't really being applied. But you can turn that off if you want. Now the content is really cool because you can do a lot of powerful things here with your multi-leaders. Now your first option that you have is in the multi-leader type. Here you pick what type, of course, of multi-leader it's going to be. You can have text, a block, or none. So your text you've seen, it just puts text that you can edit and change and do whatever you want to with, essentially, at the end of your leader tail. But a block gives you a little symbol, and you can put in text in there or any other information that you want. And it comes default with several different types of callouts. You have the detail callout, a slot callout, a circle, a box, hexagon, triangle, etc. So let's go with the detail callout. Now the attachment can go in at an insertion point of the block or at the center of the extents. So that means it's just going to center it right here, or it's going to put it at wherever the insertion point for the block is. And a lot of times those are the exact same thing. You can adjust your scale and your color here as well. So click OK, click Close, and let's create one. Now we get a call out. Now we can give it information inside these circles. You can say 1 and then 2. These can be anything you want. Now to edit this, double click it, the Edit Attributes box. These are attributed blocks that it's using here in the multi-leader. And now I can change this to whatever I want. Click OK. And there you go. Now that's great for a lot of different specific types of callouts. You could say door number 1, or if it's a plant red or plant blue, or if you have some sort of bill of material or other schedule of materials that you need, you can do that here. Or if you want to call out a specific section or detail view from a drawing and then tell everyone what sheet it's on. So this could be, view A on sheet 5. I sort of missed over a couple of things here that I want to show you. Here in the leaders panel, you have some options. There's only one type of multi-leader command, and just the multi-leader command. And what it does will depend on whichever style you're using. And then from here, you have a couple of different really cool features. You can add a leader, as we saw how to right-click on it, remove a leader, or here you can align some things. This aligns them according to space. So if you select it, and you pick your multi-leaders, press enter, then you pick the multi-leader you want to align to, and it kind of locks it in. So this will align your different multi-leader types together. Let me show you with 2 text objects. You pick the one you want to line up to, and there you go. It helps them to look a little better. Now sometimes you need to combine the different callouts. So you select the collect command. Well, this one only works, as you see, with multi-leaders that have the blocks set to them. So let's make another one. It can go anywhere, and it can say anything, except we don't have the proper style set up. Let's go to the architectural, that's the one we changed, and make another call out. Put anything in it, it doesn't matter at this point. Pick the collect command, select 1, and then 2, press enter, and there you go. It will add them together. So make sure you know which way you want it to go, and also realize that they won't go together. It just sort of lines them up. So be careful with that. But it's a quick way to combine things together if you have multiple callouts to the same or similar spot. So just keep an eye on it. But those are multi-leaders. They can do a lot of different things. They can use text, they can use blocks, you can have more than one leader. They're very easy and quick to edit. In AutoCAD is text. Text is used to label objects, to put in notes, title blocks, and a lot of other different instances throughout your drawings. There are 2 main forms of text: single line text and multi-line text. Multi-line text has mostly replaced the use of single line text, but there are still places where single line text may be better. To create single line text, type in the word detext. Pick a starting point for your text, define a height, just type in the number, enter in your rotation angle, which will typically be 0, and then start typing. When you're finished, press enter. Now it looks like it's going down to a second line. Press enter again, and it keeps going. Finally, you might want to press escape to get out of it. But when you pick one of these objects, you'll see it's a single line and it's one object. This is a second object. You can also start the single line text by going up to the Annotate tab in the ribbon, going to the text panel, click the flyout, and go single line text. And it works the same way. Now I can type in my height, I can put in my angle, and now if you hold the control key down and press enter, that will get you right out of the text editor. And there you go. When you select one of these objects and the properties palette is open, you have controls over what you see here. You have your typical color, layer, line type, etc. Your 3D visualization if you're in AutoCAD, not AutoCAD LT. And then the contents. I can edit the contents right here. See, I just changed this. You can change the text style, and that works just like a dimension style or a leader style, etc. You can change the justification. Change the height, the rotation, and everything else. I can even change the obliquing. That makes it italicized. Change my alignment, my positions, make it backwards. You can even make it upside down. Just in case your drawing is upside down and backwards, you can do that. So there are a lot of different things you can do with single line text. Something you can't do is have more than one line, obviously. And you don't have all of the fancy text editing features that are in multi-line text. We'll look at some of those later. To edit the text, again, just like anything else, you double click it, and there you go. Everything's highlighted in here. You can pick where you want your cursor to be, and that's where you're going to type. So you can just start typing away or edit it, etc. That's single line text. The nice thing about single line text is when you edit the text for whatever reason, and you just type something in, you hit enter, and you're right out. It's real easy to do. That's one benefit to single line text. So if you put it in a sort of table-like list, it makes it easy to edit each individual one. And you can move the text to put it exactly where you want it to be, to line that up, and to go. So that part is real easy to do. But of course, you can do a lot of that with multi-line text too, and we'll get into that here real soon. Text can produce notes, callouts, descriptions, or most any other form of annotation. Just type mtext on the command line to start the command. You can also type in MT, and if you type in text, you get single line text. So don't type that one in. That's something that happens sometimes, so just be careful. You can also go up to the Annotate tab on the ribbon, to the text panel, and click on the multi-line text command. And there you go. You'll see that little ABC prompt. That will tell you where your text is going to go, and it will look like your style that you have current. So if I were to type in ABC, that's what it's going to look like. When entering text, you specify opposite corners of a text bounding box. That defines the width of the paragraphs in the multi-line text object. The length of the multi-line text objects depends on the amount of text, not the length of the bounding box. So you can use grips to edit that later. So let me show you here. I'll click something, and this is the area in which it's going to work. If you run out of room, it'll just keep going down the screen. That's okay. But it will be constrained to use this width. If a word can't fit in there, it'll wrap it down to below. So let me demonstrate. Now, when you're finished writing in your text, you can just click somewhere outside of that window and there you go. So that's text. It works just like or extremely close to a word processing software program. Most of the characteristics of multi-line text are controlled by the text style, which sets the default font and some other options such as line spacing, justification, etc. You can use the current text style or you can select a new one right here in the ribbon. This file only has these two, but of course you can always make a new one by clicking here or typing in style. Within the multi-line text object, you can override the current text style. So if I double click it, I can make changes here. So if I click with my left mouse button, hold and then drag it across to highlight the text, I can come right up here and I can change some things. I can make it bold, italicized, underline, overline, strike through. I can make it all lowercase. I can make it all uppercase. And I can change the font right here. Let's go to something very different. I can even change the color of it right here as well. So that's pretty cool. You can do a lot of things right there. And you can't do these types of things to this degree with single line text. Now, I recommend that you try not to do this type of thing because what happens now is once you put in those overrides, you can't use a match properties to fix the text or to change the style. It just holds on to it. So be careful with that. If you need your text to look different, create another style that fits your display settings that you want to use, and then apply that style to that bit of text. Now, you can make multiple multi-line text objects, and you can have a header or a title type of a style, and then a regular notes type of a style. I suggest doing that. But sometimes it's not really practical, and it doesn't really matter if you're going to have to, match styles or not. But try to refrain from that if possible. When you select the text object and you look at the properties palette, you can change a lot of the different properties of that object. Of course, you have your general settings again, your color, your layer. So we can change the color here to green, the layer, the line type, etc. There are also other options in the properties palette that are unique to multi-line text. Have the style that you can change. You can edit the contents right here. If you click on the ellipsis, it will open up the text object itself, allowing you to edit it right here. If you see all this code right here, the /FBEL-MT, that's the font. You can set up the font and everything right in here if you'd like, but that's doing it the hard way. You can change the justification. And with multi-line text, you can really see how the justification is affected. On a single line text, it's not as noticeable. But as I move over each of these, I get a little preview of what's going to show up and how it's going to look. I can change the text height. I can match the orientation to another object. I can rotate it. I can change the line spacing distance, etc. Now, the background mask is pretty cool. Right now it's set to no. If I click on the ellipsis, it gives me different options. I can click here to use background mask. Now I can use the background color, meaning when I print this out, it will put a white box behind the text, or match the paper size. In other words, it will not print in that area except for the text. And that way, if there's line work beneath or underneath or behind the text, that line work won't show up, making your text much more visible. And I can use a drawing background color, or I can pick any color that you want to use. Now here you have to set that border. Now right now it's set to 0. And this is going to specify sort of a scaled version of where that border is going to go. If I type in 1, then it will fill up 100%, or a scale of 1 to 1 of my text area. Let me click OK. So you can see I have a magenta background to my text, and it fills up 1. If I select the text again and go back to that, click the ellipsis, and if I change this to, let's say, 2, it'll now go out 2 units past. So it gets kind of tricky on exactly how that works, but if you want to fill up just the text, you set it to 1. If you want it to go a little bit past, it needs to be higher than 1, and that will be measured in units. Now, as I edit this text, and if I put my rotation back to 0, that will help us see it a little better. My box fills even more. And that allows you to create a lot of different types of highlighted notes. Now, if you're printing in color, that will print out a magenta color behind your text. If you're just printing in black and white, it will be some shade of gray or whatever line thickness that your magenta color is set to. When you double click on the text, you have some text editing abilities, and we've looked at most of them. And a lot of the things that you have here are available in the properties palette. Your line spacing, your justification, all of your colors, bold, etc. You can insert some symbols here, degrees, plus, minus, and a lot of others. You can set up columns. Now, the columns are pretty cool. So, there you go. If you have a lot of notes, you can have just one object and you can put them in multiple columns. Double click that and you edit it by pulling this arrow down or up. And you can change the width of your columns right here just by clicking and holding it. Eventually it gets wide enough where it can hold everything. And this will change their separation. And that's controlled here. I put it on the dynamic columns and a manual height. That means I can manually, or will have to manually, adjust their height and width. Now if I go to auto height, that means as I type, it will automatically fill in the area for me. And that you have to define. Or I can say no, and it will put it all into one column. You can also create static columns. Say, hey, I want it to be in 5 columns, and then just work it out however it needs to be. But if you don't have enough text, then you're going to have an empty space. So there's a lot that you can do with multi-line text. There are a lot of different settings that can help you with your notes. It's very powerful. It's very word processor-like. So if you've used the word processor for a lot of different things, you'll be able to use multi-line text. And if there's something you want to do, just think about, well, how would I do it in a word processor? And you're probably going to be able to do it the exact same way right here in AutoCAD. Ways to use text, especially multi-line text. The method you use will depend on your needs. Styles will control your font type. Let them. M-text objects can be edited within the text editor, but once you do, you lose some editing abilities. Let's open up and insert some text, and I'll show you how. If you start the M-text command, pick a box anywhere, it doesn't really matter. Then right-click inside the box. Now you want the import text option. Browse to the folder where we're working. And insert the note-pipe.txt file. With this import option, you can import a TXT file, something that someone has already typed up and saved as a TXT file. It's raw data, it's just the text, it's not formatted. AutoCAD can insert that and put it right into your text object. Once done, just click right outside there. This is a note. It's a bit of a humorous piping note that you may want to take a look at. Some of it's quite funny. But let's copy this text object. That way we'll have the original still intact and we can mess with this one and I can show you some things you can do with it. So for example here, if I change the font type inside the editor for this part of the note, or if I change the color, I can do that. But now I have problems with the text style. If I use the match properties, I can't change the style. But watch, as I take an unaltered text object, and if I change its style, now we see here this style is set to annotative. This style is set to standard. This one is still set to standard. So if I start the match properties command, say I want everything to look like this one, I pick these two. Well, this is now set to standard. This one is set to standard. And this one is set to standard. But that part that's red in a different font, I can't put it back to normal. If I double click the text and I want to override these settings, I can't. I have to come down here to this remove formatting, say remove all, and then I can come and make my changes. So you have to be careful with it. It makes things difficult, but you can do it. You'll have to go to a few extremes or a few extra steps to fix it. So just be careful with that. MText can also have a background mask applied to it. We looked over that briefly and we found out a way on how to mask it. I want to demonstrate that to you again. The quickest and easiest way to do that is to just keep the properties palette open. Select the text and go to background mask. Now, you can also activate the editor in here and get your settings this way. We'll use the background color for an example here. If you use the drawing background color, you don't get to change the color. So I can click on it and it won't do anything. It'll just stay where it was before, but it won't be red. Okay, as you can kind of see here, the background is grayed out. You can't see anything. If I move this text over the top of this text, and if I make sure it is on top with my draw order, this text is blocked out. So you can kind of see that line right there. The text is there, it hasn't been changed, hasn't been deleted. And if I pick it, it pops up. But when I go to print, this is what it will look like. So that's a great method to use to keep your text visible, especially in a very busy drawing. So if you double click in here, and you can see a spelling error is made. If you right click, you have different options or suggestions available. Maybe you meant popular. If not, just undo. You can find some more suggestions here, or if it is a word and it is spelled correctly, you can click add to dictionary right here, or you can just ignore it altogether. This is a great way to make sure that you're spelling things correctly. You can also use the spell command. It's found right here in the ribbon, or you can just type in the word spell. This will work a couple of different ways. You can look in the entire drawing, the current space, or you can select objects. If you just want to select objects, you can pick this box right here. You can pick one or two, or as many different text objects as you would like. And it works for dimensions, multi-letters, single line text, and multi-line text. Once you've selected everything, click Start. It'll do a scan. It'll find the word, it'll zoom right to it and give you some suggestions. And if the suggestions are wrong, you can just type it in right here, whatever it needs to be. And in every instance that this misspelling is found in your selection set, it will change all of them at once or just one at a time, or you can ignore them all. So those are some advanced editing techniques and tools that you can use when working with multi-line text. Line work in your drawing, you can try using what's called a wipeout. The wipeout command creates a wipeout object. This type of object hides what's behind it. Let's open up the annotation drawing. Here we have some line work. On this page we have some notes and some dimensions. Let's just go to the blank page. Alright, let's say that we need to hide some things. A few chairs or the doorway or something. Well, we can create a wipeout. Just type in the word wipeout to start the command, or come to the markup panel on the Annotate tab on the ribbon and click Wipeout. You pick your first point, your second point, and it's making a polygon. You can make it any shape you want. Once you're finished, press Enter. And there you go. It's its own object. You can see it here in the Properties tool palette. And it's essentially it. It creates an object that blocks everything behind it. So now I can put in text, or whatever I need to. If you have a closed polygon of any shape, could be a polyline, you can convert it to a wipeout frame. Just start the wipeout command, then type P for polyline. Then select it. You can pick to either erase or not erase the polyline. I say erase it, otherwise your polyline is going to be there, and you'll have to deal with that. And there you go. This is a way to block out text or line work or something that you don't want to see. Now that we have our wipeouts, and you can delete the polyline when you create it, or you can leave it there. And we also see here that there's a frame that's around it. Start the wipeout command again. There are two options, frames and polyline. The polyline we used already. We selected a polyline that's closed to use as the definition for our wipeout frame. Frames, we'll turn them off or on. You have three settings, on, off, or display but not plot. If you turn it on, this is the way it looks. And when you print your drawing, it's going to have this outline on your drawing. If that's okay with you, then go ahead and do it. If you start the wipeout command again, go to frames and click off. This is exactly what the drawing is going to look like when you print it out. The problem with this is that you don't know it's here. You can't really hover over it to find it, but you can do a crossing window to find it. But if you were to open up this drawing just the way it is, say that one wasn't there, you would really not have any idea that there was a wipeout there at all. So you used a crossing window to find it. So that could get you into some trouble. So be careful with that. For the wipeouts that you have is display but not plot. This will show you the frame. This will let you know there's a wipeout there, but it won't print out. Well, that's pretty useful. If you're going to use wipeouts, I suggest that you use the frame setting, what's called a set to 2, or display without printing. You can type in wipeout frame, and you can get to the system variable that controls that. Right now it's set to 2. If you set it to 0, that's off. Set it to 1 is on but will plot. Set to 2 will be on but won't plot. So just keep these things in mind. If you want to mask an area behind the text or block it out, I suggest that you use the background mask. Click Use Background Mask, set the setting to something about 1.1 and use the drawing background color. That will mask the text, but it won't create another object that you have to worry about and have to maintain. Because if I do something like this, my wipeout might be in the wrong place. Here's the text. you may have to use what's called a draw order. Type in DR, press enter, and then click front. That will bring it sort of to the top of the list. Anything else is behind it or below it. Doesn't change in actual elevation or anything. It just moves things backwards, sort of like layering a stack of paper. So if you have the wipeout, you'll have to make sure you're aware that it's there, and it will have to be maintained. I've seen a lot of drawings that have had holes in them when printed that nobody could explain until we set the wipeout frames to 1 or 2, and then we saw it and we're like, oh, there's a wipeout there. So just be careful and be cautious, but they can be very useful. AUTO-CAD. Text styles are no different. They are actually very simple to create and edit. Let's open up a file that has some text in it. Let's look at the dimension example file. Now go over to the Styles tab. This dimension style uses a text style for the text. The text style it's using is called standard. Now we have 4 different styles in this drawing. They all look a little bit different, or are different in some way. Different size, different color. It could be a lot of different ways or reasons that you would want to make a different text style. Your text styles can be edited right here. Go to the Annotate tab on the ribbon on the text panel, click on the text style flyout arrow, or just type in the word style on the command line. Text styles were one of the very first styles added in AUTO-CAD. That's why when you type in style, it opens up the text style manager. Text styles are much less complicated than dimension styles. This is it. There's only one window here. You select the text style that you want to change or edit, and you do. You can also create a new one. Let's make a new one. We'll just call it Style 1. Click OK. Now we have a list of fonts that we can use. You can use all of these or any of them. Let's go with Verdana. Now a lot of times, but not always, you'll have font style settings here. Bold, bold italic, italic, or regular. There's a bold italic. Let's just go bold. And you can make your text annotative or not. An annotative text style object means that if the text is in model space, then it will automatically be scaled up to a specific paper text height, regardless of the scale that you're viewing at. And what that means is that you'll put in your text and you say, no matter what scale this drawing is printed at, or a view or whatever, I always want the text to be, so many units tall. So in this case, this one is set to 0.2 units in height. So if that is in inches, then it's 0.2 of an inch, or if it's in feet, it's 0.2 of a foot, etc. Or you can just turn that off and have it default to that size no matter what the scale is. So in a different, larger scale, then it's going to be, smaller. But in a zoomed in scale, it's going to be larger when it prints. That's up to you. I like using the annotative text, especially when I put my text in model space. But typically, I will put my text in paper space. That way I don't have to worry about the scale. I don't have to worry about it showing up in other views, etc. If you do set this without a height, I suggest you leave this at 0. That way, it will use the default height and your text objects won't be changed according to style. Or you can make text styles based on text height. So if you have a title or a header, you might want that to be a little bit bigger. If so, then there you go. So you'll see here that this title here is set to 0.2, but the standard is set to 0. My notes are set to 0.1. And the annotative here, this is the default text style that comes with AUTO-CAD in most of the template files. So it depends how you want to use it and what you want to do. Now the width factor will literally scale the width of the text. A 1.0 means it's not scaling it. If I less, it scrunches them in. If I go greater than 1, it's doubling it. Kind of like italicizing your text. Put it at a 15 degree, see it kind of slightly bends it, or it's at an angle. So you use what you want to use. Click Apply, Set Current, and now whenever we go with text, this is what we're going to use. So if I create multi-text, there you go. It's a little big, it's a little thick, and it's slanted. That's a great text style to use for a header or a title to a drawing or to a view. Text styles, as with all styles, are saved in the drawing. They're not saved on your computer or on a network where anyone can get to them. So if you create a style that you want to use in other drawings, you must import that style. I recommend that you create a standard set of text styles in your template file somewhere and start all of your new drawings from that template file. If you copy and then paste text or insert text into a drawing, and that text object style is not in the drawing, then the style is going to come with it. The same thing is going to happen with dimensions and multileaders. When this is done, AutoCAD looks for a text style of the same name, just as the one that you're importing. If it's found in that file already, then that's the one it's going to use. If not, it's going to bring the style with it. So be careful when naming your text styles. The same thing with your dimension styles and your multi-leader styles, your table styles, all of your styles. Because if you use text or drawings from other companies, you may want to make sure that your text styles and dimension styles don't have the same name. Because this is what's going to happen. If you have a text style just called text, and then you get a drawing from someone else and their name of their text style is also called text. If I import my drawing into theirs or theirs into mine, it's going to use the style that's already there. So I can make a text style that has something really big and obliqued, and widened out like this one. But if I import this text into another drawing that has a style called style 1, it's going to take on those properties and just completely disregard mine. So be careful with that. Here's my suggestion. Whenever you make a style, and if it's a text style or a dimension style, either one, you can come up to it, rename it, and at the very beginning, put your initials, your company name, something that's more unique. That way, my BCB, which are my initials, style 1, will always be BCB style 1. So anything that I do that's special like that, everyone's going to know about it. It won't be overridden. And if you use something called standard, all AutoCAD template files come with a text style in it called standard. Good chances are that someone else's drawing will too. And you might not want your specialized text showing up like theirs. So keep that in mind. Give it a unique name, set it up, and then use it. Tables in AutoCAD can be generated very quickly. They create a spreadsheet-like grid of lines and text. Tables have styles too. First, let's take a quick look at tables. You can create a table from an existing spreadsheet or from scratch. Just type the word table on the command line, or you can go to the table panel on the Annotate tab in the ribbon and click the table button. They're fairly straightforward, though it looks like it could be a bit complicated, and you can make them more complicated. You have different styles. This drawing only has one called standard, and you can start from an empty table or from some data link that we're not going to really get into now, but it will automatically extract data found in your file and put it into the table, which can be very handy. But to set up a table, you pick your style, you pick your insertion point, or you tell it that you're going to, and you define how many rows and how many columns that you're going to have. You can just click on the arrows or you can type it in. Let's go 4 rows, 5 columns. Now you have 3 different types of settings: a title, a header, or a data field. If you look at this little preview over here, this is what it's going to look like, though it doesn't give you a preview with the right number of columns and rows. I'm not sure why, but that's just what it does. But this is what it's going to look like. So you have your first row here, which is going to be the title. Then you have a header row. And then you have the number of rows that you define here is 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can switch any of these into a data type, a header type, or a title type. It's up to you. Typically, the style that you're going to need is going to be a title, and then a header, and then data. Sometimes you won't need the headers. You'll just need data, or sometimes you won't need the title, you'll just need a header like this. Again, it's only going to matter what you need. Click OK, pick your point, and there's your table. It seems simple enough, right? Now you just have to enter in the information you want to put inside each cell. So we can call this column 1, press the tab key, column 2, tab key, and it keeps going on. You can use your arrow keys to move around in each cell, or you can pick with your mouse which cell you want to edit. Now the different cells have different properties. You can lock them, you can lock just the content, you can lock just the formatting, or you can lock both of them. Once the cell has been locked in either category, then another person cannot change them unless they come up to it and unlock it, which is very nice. It keeps accidents from happening. You can change your text just like a regular text editor, and when you double click in the cell, you get the text editor ribbon come up, and you can just edit it like you would normal text. You can change your justification, and that changes it in the cell. And you can do this in more than one at a time as well. You can also do it in your properties panel. So if I pick all of these cells, I pick one box, hold down the shift key, and now I have selected all of these boxes. And I can change different styles, cell height, cell width, alignments, and then they'll all match all at the same time. I can even put in background fills to stylize your drawing. I can change the border colors if I click on the border here. You can also right click and get to most of these options as well. So if I pick a color, let's say blue, you see the preview here, that's what's going on. I click OK, press escape, and now I've changed the color. So you can do a lot with these to stylize them. If you want to change the width or the height, you just grip edit. I can change one column. I can change everything at once globally. If I click here, once I've stretched it, I can go into columns just like in multi-line text, or I can stretch it back down. If you select the table anywhere, you can pick up in the column, and I can make changes just to the column this way. I can grip edit it. I can change the formatting of the entire column. And in the same manner, you can do that sort of thing for a row. One of the nice things about tables in AutoCAD is that in the same way that the text editor works like a word processor, tables in AutoCAD work like a spreadsheet. So you can add some basic formulas, not a lot, just some of the basic ones that you're going to want. A sum, average, count. You can get information from one cell and add it to another. You can make an equation or formula, which is very cool. You can right click and you can insert rows above or below. You can delete a row. You can look for recent input, or you can change the data style. So if I'm in this row here, I can change it. Cell style is now a title. So it makes the text in there a little bit bigger, a little bit more bold. And that's really all that the styling does. So if you want to create other styles of tables, you can. Just make new, give it a name, hit continue, and now you can define a bit of information. You have your data header or title, or you can even create a new cell style. So you can take your title, give it a bigger margin, make it of a different type, change the format a little bit from a general to percentage, to currency, to a date, etc. So a good type you might want to make would be like a date style. You can change the text style here, the height, the color, and you can make or define how you want the borders to look. The header and the data work the same way, they just have their own presets already put in. Once you've created all of this, you can also make your table go up or down. But once you've created all this, you save your style, and now you have a different one to choose from. So if you need to make like a bill of materials or a drawing sheet list or any type of chart, and you're going to use it over and over again, create a style. That way, when you start your table, you'll have it already set up. You just have to put in the number of rows, columns, and the actual data that's going to go into it. Commands that help you do repetitive things very quickly. It reduces the amount of work you have to do to produce your drawings. And that's the whole point. One of those commands is the hatch command. Let's open up the dimension example file. Now go to the model tab. It's all the way here on the left. Now we're in model space. And let's say that we needed to shade in some of the areas on our drawing here for our item that we've created, and we need to show them in a specific way. We want to highlight the holes and highlight the area inside here. We would use the hatch command for that. Well, let's get these center lines out of the way. Go to the Home tab on the ribbon, on the Layer panel. Let's use the Freeze option. Pick it. Now pick right there to get rid of those center lines. Press Enter. That's going to get everything out of our way. Well, let's start by using the Hatch command. If you go to the Home tab on the ribbon, then to the Draw panel, the Hatch command is right here. There are 3 different types of hatches that you can kind of create. A hatch, which is a series of different lines in a pattern. A gradient fill, but it has the exact same properties of a hatch. Or a boundary. The boundary doesn't put that pattern inside, but it creates the boundary like you would with the hatch. So it just creates the closed area, but not what goes inside it. But it works the same way in creating a hatch pattern, only it just doesn't. So if you have a series of lines and you need to make a closed area, the boundary is a good way to do it. So what you want to do when you start the hatch command is just pick it. And then the contextual ribbon tab for the hatch creation tool will come up. This is what it is. In a contextual ribbon tab, you've probably noticed, you've seen them in use several different times. The hatch creation tab is one, the text editing tab is another one, dimension styles tab, etc. A contextual ribbon tab is one that just pops up in a certain context. It's only there when you need it. So it's going to be real simple here to create this hatch pattern. Just pick a point inside this circle. Press Enter, and there's your hatch pattern. It's ugly, isn't it? It's not what you wanted, is it? No. But if you zoom in really far, you can see that it does have a hatch pattern to it. Well, we need to change this. There are a lot of different ways to do that. If you select an existing hatch pattern, that will bring up another contextual ribbon tab called the Hatch Editor. And it looks just like the hatch creation tool. The problem here is that our scale for the hatch pattern is way too small. So you come here and you just type in a new number. Still not enough? There we go. So when you go higher for the scale, it spaces the lines farther apart, makes it bigger. But if I go below 1, it makes them even tighter. They get closer together. So this almost looks like a solid fill, even though it's not, though it would print that way. Some other things you can edit are the angle. Just click on the slider bar and drag it back and forth, or type in the angle you want it to be at. A 45-degree angle of a 45-degree angled line means it's going to go straight up at 90 degrees. An angle of 0 will put it back to where it normally is. And you can also make a hatch transparent. Sort of fades it back a little bit. And that's again with the slider bar right here. You can change the pattern, the color, or you can even put in a background fill. Once you're all finished, just click on the Close Hatch Editor button on the right. And there you go. So we have a hatch pattern that's white. It'll put white lines, or it'll put black lines on white paper, in this cyan background color. If we select it again, let's kind of ease that back a little bit with the transparency. Close the hatch editor, and there you go. So now we've kind of made our circle. But in this kind of a thing here, it makes this cross-section look like that is the steel or the material, and then the rest of this bracket here is the hole. Well, let's just delete that. Start the hatch command again. You can type in the word hatch and pick your point. Let's try a different pattern. If you click on this little down arrow right here, you get this graphic interface of all sorts of different patterns that you could possibly use. There are a lot of them. These brick work great when you want to create the side of a brick house. You also have herringbone patterns, crosses, sand, several different bricks, and all a really cool effect on a lake or on the side of a building or in any different way. Here's some gravel. Or you can even just go with a solid fill. That's up to you. Again, it depends on what you're trying to show, what you're trying to do, and what your needs are. There are a couple of different ways to create your hatch pattern. You can, by default, just pick inside an area, or you can select a closed object, like this circle. In a lot of cases, it's going to have the exact same effect, but not always. It just depends. Like this blue line for the outline of our bracket here is not one single closed item, so I can't select it. I have to use the pick area. I can pick my points here, or I can select my area that way. Now, if I have a hatch object that's a little bit different, let's say it's blue, and my angle completely different. There we go. I can do a couple of different things. I can do match properties and change it that way, which is a really nice thing to do, and that's something I do often myself. I'll create a hatch pattern, and I won't know what layer I'm on or what I want it to be, but I know I want it to match another hatch object that's in my drawing. So I'll use the match properties. Another thing you can do is when you start the hatch command is to pick on the match properties button right here. Say, I want this hatch pattern to be drawn like this one. So now when I pick my point in here, it automatically matches. That can save you some time too. And you don't have to go into another command. It's all done within the same command. If you want to edit your hatch pattern, you can in a couple of different ways. If I have a line here, and I use the trim command, pick my cutting edge, I can pick my hatch pattern. It'll trim it according to that line. Now, if you select a hatch pattern, you'll get an outline with grips. Now, these grips can be grip edited. If I hover over it, I can stretch that vertex point, which means I can move it to over here. Turn my O snaps on, I can snap right to that point. I can remove that vertex altogether, or I can add another vertex. This is very handy and very useful when you want to edit hatch patterns. Now let's say you needed something converted to an arc. You can. Just click the Convert to Arc option, and it makes that an arc. If it's an arc, there's a Convert to Line. It'll keep the two nearest vertex points and just create a new circle here. So wherever you put it, it's going to go from these 2 points and through your new point. It's simple enough. If you have hatch and you want a boundary to show up, just select that hatch, the editor comes up, and then pick the Recreate Boundary. It'll ask you what you want it to do, be a region or polyline. If you want it to be associated with it, say yes in this case, press enter, and it draws the line in there for you. Now this line is associated to the hatch pattern. So if I edit this line, the hatch pattern will be edited as well. I can delete the line though, and the hatch pattern remains. Undo that, and if I delete the hatch pattern, the polyline remains. So if you need to create a polyline around a big area, create a hatch and then recreate the boundary. It's a very useful trick that you can use to create boundaries for areas. We've seen how to create some line work, how to edit the line work, how to control some things visually between layers and styles, and we've also seen how to create annotations. Let's continue on with our chapter project here. We're going to start with the chapter project from our layer chapter, chapter 9, and we're going to build on top of that file. I've put a copy of it here of what I've done in the Chapter 10 subfolder. It's called Project Template. Let's open that up. This will get us started. So remember, annotations will make or break your drawing, especially when construction is involved. Many people that you make drawings for do not know how to read drawings. So that may sound surprising to you, but you're going to find out it's often the case. In this chapter project, we're going to set up the dimension styles and the text styles for a later project. Again, open up the chapter project file from chapter 9 and let's work on this. What we're going to do is to make 3 text styles, one for notes, one for a header, and one for a title. Now you can be anywhere in your file for this right now. So go to the Annotate tab and let's check and see what we have here. We have a Roman and a standard, okay? Well, that doesn't fit our needs. What we need is something different. So let's create 3 different text styles. So we're going to make a notes style. So pick the new button, call it notes, and click OK. Now we've created it. Now you may have noticed that it matches in setup of what the current text style was, or the one that we had selected when we said make a new one. It copies the active one, but that's okay, because a lot of times that's exactly what you want, and you just want to tweak it a little bit. So we want to set the text height to 1/8 of an inch. So just come in here and literally put in 1/8, and we want the font to be Arial, which it already is, which is fantastic. Keep it regular, width factor of 1, oblique angle of 0. That's fantastic, and hit set current. And then it'll say, hey, look, you've changed this style since you've last done this. Do you really want to or not? And yes, I do. That's great. Now let's make another one. Click new and type in header. Click OK. And now on this, we want it to be Arial, but we want it to be bold. So let's make it bold. And we want the height to be a little bit bigger. So we'll go from 1/8 to 3/16. Okay. Now let's make another one. So yes, we want to save that. And this time we're going to call it title. Click OK. And that's going to be an Arial, bold, and we're going to make that 1/4 of an inch. Some really big text here because it's our title text. Set current. Actually, let's make our notes style current. And then click close. So now, automatically, our text style that's going to happen is going to be called notes. Styles that are going to be suitable for an architectural drawing measured in feet and inches. Let's go to the Dimension tab on the Annotate tab in the ribbon. Click the flyout arrow, and we only have the one style here. We're going to make a new style, say new, and we're going to call it Architectural Project. And we're going to start with the standard style because that's all we have available to us. Click Continue. Now we need to make some changes. In the Lines tab, let's make everything by layer. Same thing with the extension lines. Okay, now let's change the extend beyond ticks to 0. We'll keep that the same. Now this is going to be an architectural drawing, so we need to look at the text tab and the symbols and arrows tabs. Now we're going to use architectural tick, that's good. Now our leader is going to be a closed arrowhead, which is what we want. Everything else here appears to be what we want. So let's go to the text tab. And I know you're saying, well, how do I know what I want? That's a great question. And if you really did ask that, I'm glad you did. Well, I'm giving you the design standard. I'm saying this is how we want it to be presented. Because there are so many different settings in here, you can set it up a million different ways and you really have no idea until you've done it for a while and you've seen, hey, I like how this looks and we're going to keep it that way. All right, that's what I'm going to use. Now, you can also find out that, hey, you know what, I need to tweak this drawing just a little bit, and that's okay to do. I suggest if you want to tweak a customized style, then you copy it, give it a name, and say, hey, it's based on this default style, but it's just a little bit different. Maybe it's normal-bold or normal-italicized or something else. But that will help you know that, yeah, you've tweaked it, it's special, and it's okay to copy and paste it around. It's not going to override any other type of dimension styles at all. So here in the text tab, let's set our style to notes for the text and our text color to by layer. No fill color, we're not going to fill it in from behind. We're just going to leave everything else to be the same. And that's it. Just a few tweaks here to the dimension style and set up a couple of note styles, but that's it. And now that we have these things set up, we can start any project with this file, and we know that our notes, our text, our dimensions, they're all going to work out the way we want them to. That's why you make a template file, so you don't have to go in and set up your dimensions every time. Now that you're done, go ahead and save your file.